Well, it's February the 17th in the afternoon, and I got the very bad news here a little after 11 o'clock that Rush Limbaugh had passed away this morning, and I thought I'd dedicate a few thoughts about this. Of course, I've been a listener to Rush, almost from the beginning. I think perhaps 6 weeks after he first went on the nationwide, broadcast, it started off that my mother was listening to talk radio, and back in that time period, and there was somebody on there that some local station that she kind of liked. Then he went away. Then apparently Rush came on, and she was talking about him and saying, they said, this guy is really good. Says, the only thing that bothers me about him is he seems to have some little problem with women. Of course, I think he was just going through a divorce at the time or something with the second wife. But at any rate, he was really right on all the issues. And so I think, like on a vacation day or something, because I would listen to it and really got into it too. And of course, during that period, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have where I worked having an actual radio, and it was against the rules. And so, I could go to lunch, during my lunch break, and I would always time it so that I could catch the beginning of the show, or key part of the show, at the beginning of driving to some place. Usually, it was this place that had these half orders of Chinese fried rice, and and then listen to them on the way back. So I would get little bits and pieces, and sometimes get to hear it a little bit on a day I was taking a vacation day or something like that. And in those days, he also worked the holidays a lot because he was just trying to get a show going. And so he would, like on a day like a Labor Day or a Memorial Day, that kind of thing, he'd still be on the air himself. Whereas in more recent years now, he's highly successful. He didn't need to do that, but in those days he did. And so that's kind of where I would hear bits and pieces of them. And I'm trying to think. There was a time later on when I rigged up a very crude timer with a tape player and recorded the episodes, and then would listen to them on a little playback recorder with earphones while I went for walks and things like that after work and all that. So like I said, I've been following Rush, and of course later on with things like internet, Rush 24/7 and iPhone and that sort of thing. I could listen to it wherever I was while I worked, because my work was at a computer, and so you could do all the things I did on the computer still listening. Most people probably listen to music and stuff, but I do that. So, but the point is that I've been a long time listener, and this is going to be quite a loss to us, to say the least. We knew pretty much, I think, from the over around a year ago, that it sounded like he didn't make it totally clear, but what he said his illness was, it didn't look like it had a high chance of success. We were kind of hoping, I think, for a miracle in the opening months, but at any rate, what we kind of dread has finally happened. And so it's an absolutely great loss to the conservative movement, obviously. Think about the timing. Rush came on the scene right at the end of the Reagan administration. It was like I think it was the 1st of August, I believe, of 1988, right around that time, at any rate. And so in the last months of the Reagan years, and so he kind of took up the mantle of conservatism as Ronald Reagan left office, and was there, through the Bush years, Bush the first, and all that. And the early show, had a lot more comedy in it. The more recent years, it's been much more hardcore political commentary and the sort. But in the early years, there was a lot of commentary, like using the theme from the Imperial March from Star Wars, the Gorbasm about how great Gorbachev was and whenever he did everything, all those days. There was a lot of fun and comical bits in that period, which were kind of a highlight of the show. Of course, over the years, it seems to have turned into much more into just pure political commentary with much less humor in it. maybe things are getting less funny, huh? But any rate, that's kind of, I just wanted to make a little tribute there, and so how he'd be missed. But I do think that he did take up the mantle of conservatism as Ronald Reagan left the scene, and of course a lot of people are attributing the victory of the Republicans in the 1994 congressional elections to Rush. I think he made a major contribution, of course. The other thing I think that, of course, played into that, and I would say, is that that the country had gone into a fairly conservative direction, and in fact, you really had a situation where you had, let's say, I would say in the 92 election, a 95, well, what would it be? It'd be about 57% conservative vote if you add the Bush vote to the Perot vote. But of course, the third party split the vote and by default made Bill Clinton president. And I think, and then Bill Clinton proceeded to govern as a liberal, and I think that is what led to that turnaround in Congress, I think, as much as anything. I mean, and of course, Rush highlighted this a lot, because I think they got something that they weren't looking for. Basically, by splitting up their vote, they got a government that was out of favor in that sense, and I think that, so that's a big factor too. The thing I always remember about Rush was that he was very good on politics, but every time he got anything to do with numbers or science, he seemed to really get turned around the axle a lot around it, and that's was always a lot of fun in a way, but his heart was always in the right place, on things like the climate change issue and those kind of things. I think, again, to a degree, he did speak in a rather straightforward language and very simple. I mean, which occasionally would, of course, anytime he got into a technical subject, would kind of get me a little irked in some ways, but in the sense that, I don't see the global warming thing as exactly just a flat-out hoax. I think it's kind of more like a rogue science theory that got out of control. But that is to say, I don't think it's like somebody just sat down and said, let's perpetrate a hoax on everybody. I think it was a serious scientific endeavor that people kind of got carried away with, which I think evolved out of the global nuclear winter things of the 80s, and once the kind of the fall of the Soviet Union had and all the arms control, as I mentioned I think in a previous video, I think that morphed into the global warming climate change issue. But like I said, Rush was always had the right answer. Just sometimes the work was interesting, but I always enjoyed him. And I mean, in fact, I was sitting down hoping after the power failure that I would turn on the show today and listen to see if he was back or not. And of course, we got the bad news as soon as his wife came on. Instead, I know what this is going to be, because I didn't think she was going to do the show. And so, but he, and of course, I think in recent years, I think he grew somewhat frustrated with the way politics was going. I think you can tell that a lot. And of course, he became a very early supporter of President Trump. And in fact, I just noticed on Fox at noon today, or a little after noon, well, it was more like 1 o'clock, I guess it was, something like. At any rate, this actually brought Trump out for a change. I mean, the first time he really called in anybody and talked, since he really left office. I think in a couple of press releases, he's been very quiet. And of course, he wasn't very quiet the other day about a certain other individual, but we'll still get into that today. So he, but he became an early supporter of Trump when he came down the escalator and immediately seized upon his statements there. I think on things like illegal immigration and all the jobs going overseas and everything. And I think that's been another issue that's been in the background is, traditional Republican viewpoint has been a fair trade kind of thing, of course, open free trade. The idea that we'd be competitive, but apparently what we've had developed though over time, of course, is you have China as a very large, and also all of Asia for that matter, very large emerging economies in the Southeast Asia and so forth. and they've brought really cheap but energetic labor into the marketplace. And I think to some degree this has led to a situation where it's become obvious that this isn't about fair competition. This is about manipulating the currencies in certain ways and about seeking economic dominance. And I think that's why there's been sort of a shift in policy, which I think President Trump brought into place. Because after all, if you can't make the necessities of your society for your own national security, then you're really at risk. And that's where the free trade idea has to go away and be replaced with something else, particularly in high-tech areas and even basic metals like steel and so forth. Well, I don't want to digress too much on that, but I think that Rush Limbaugh became an advocate of Trump, and I would have to admit that in the early days, I was more aware of Trump's background and his flirtation with an independent run in 2000, I think it was, with the failing days of the Ross Perot party. And I think you've heard my comments on third party previously, whether you like them or not. And the fact that a lot of the issues he had at the time were hardly the kind of conservative Republican issues that he embraced in his 2016 run. I mean, the difference between pro-abortion and for tough gun control then, as opposed to his more recent position of being pro-life and pro-Second Amendment and so forth. And I think that was a thing that kind of caused me some concern early on. And so my original, just to say briefly, that my original candidate at the time I'd picked up was Scott Walker, actually. And there's a variety of reasons behind that. Well, I thought he was pretty good, but of course he kind of faded from the scene after the first debate, basically. And I was, of course, left kind of in a, what am I going to do? And I actually picked up on Ted Cruz until the Indiana primary. But I'd say that after the Indiana primary, I said, well, it's got to be Trump, because, I mean, and we just hope he'll do what he said he would do. Well, has there ever been a president who has stuck to his word better than Trump? I mean, really? I mean, he did. he did what he said he was going to do to the best of his ability to carry it out. Granted, there was strong opposition at times in elements of Congress, and there were factors of the political world which didn't allow every policy to be carried out as smoothly as we would have liked. I mean, and so at any rate, but I would say that Rush was right about that and picking Trump, and that we really got more than we ever bargained for, in my opinion, there with the wall, Supreme Court, 3 Supreme Court justices, and a lot of judges at lower levels, and a lot of good policies, a lot of deregulation, a tax cut that actually was for the middle class. And of course, that's one thing that always kind of annoys me about the media, is how they keep going on about. Every time a Democrat gets on the media and says, well, the Trump tax cuts were for the rich. Well, excuse me, but they really weren't. I mean, a bulk of the tax cuts were really for the, the middle class and for small businesses. And though there were corporate tax cuts also involved, you have to realize that those cuts were designed to stimulate jobs and did create a spectacular number of jobs. So the idea of seeing this as a pro-rich person's policy is absurd when you consider the degree to which rich money went into the campaign to defeat Trump in the last election in 2020. And the massive amounts of rich money that went into trying to defeat people that supported Trump. And even Mitch McConnell needs to realize that they were trying to get rid of him too. So, but anyhow, but I just wanted to kind of say that Rush really picked that one right, and it worked out very good. And of course, I guess that's, I hear that one of the reasons Rush fought so hard to stay alive in the last months was he wanted to stay in there till the election was over to do what he could do. So at any rate, I think I don't want to go on forever about this, but just to be a tribute primarily to Rush Limbaugh and all the good things he did for us. He was even, and I can remember some other instances. One of the ones I remember is the 2008 election, because one tendency I had is whether I agreed with him or disagreed with him, he always had this email thing, and I would email him and tell him what I thought about things. And anyway, I don't think he ever read them. But anyhow, I remember one time when Barack Obama was coming on and Hillary Clinton was appearing to be losing, and I was going, well, everybody was still bashing Hillary. I said, do we really want to help Barack Obama get the nomination? So I said, we really ought to start doing some stuff to support Hillary. And about 2 weeks later, he came up with this Operation Chaos thing, which was right out of what I was saying. And again, I doubt he actually read my emails and acted on it. I think it's purely great minds work in the same way, perhaps. But at any rate, I thought it was an interesting coincidence. And of course, the idea was that he kept the thing going for a while, although Obama eventually, got the nomination. But and then actually, one could argue about, and of course, Rush's objective was not that Hillary Clinton would win or even win the nomination. I think he was just hoping to make the thing more contested and hopefully, a little bit more resentful after that. And of course, but I don't want to get off too much on that. You get the idea. But those are some memories I have involving Rush and listening to him and interaction with him. But he was always a very strong supporter of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the fundamental principles of this country. And of course, his famous Rush Revere books with the talking horse that took people through the history of the country and the revolution and everything. And of course, his annual rendition about the true story of the Pilgrims and Thanksgiving are always memorable issues. Well, anyway, I'll close this for now. I just want to make a tribute to Rush because I figured, well, it's the appropriate thing to do considering everything. He sure will be missed. All for now. And again, if you like these videos, remember to subscribe and give me a like. And if you have any comments, please do. All for now.